All right, as I was saying, my name is Donovan, and we're speaking about Aconcagua tonight. And this is a group I was with in February of this year, climbing eight guys and one female, climbing to 22,841 feet. For those of you who just joined, I'm going to just jump back here 1 second. Excuse me, I'm getting all flustered here. This is Aconcagua, both a climbing peak and a mountaineering and a trekking peak, as I mentioned here at the beginning. So I'm going to start with a quick little video that we filmed at base camp.
Hi, I'm Donovan Pacholl, the owner of Embark. We're currently here at Aconcagua Base Camp on the Polish Traverse Route to summit the highest mountain in the Americas. If you've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro or trekked to Everest Base Camp and you're ready to take it to the next level, Aconcagua is definitely your mountain. This is a high trekking expedition peak. We're excited to offer this climb in coming years, so please reach out to us at embarkexplorationco.com.
Yeah, so why I wanted to show you that is I wanted to show you what the base camp looked like, and then we're going to get into more details about that. But the real thing about this is if you're looking to take your hiking or your trekking to the next level. So if I know a number of you here have climbed Kilimanjaro or trekked Everest Base Camp or maybe done Cotopaxi or something, this is a next level trek. You cannot start on a trek like this. This is a higher level. So this is a higher level trek. So, and I'll get to that more here in a moment. So our projected 2024 climbing dates are January 20th to February 8th. That's this coming 2024. And that's, if you can do the number, it's about 20 days that you'll need to be in the country of Argentina. We are doing what's called the Polish Traverse Route. There are two routes up Aconcagua, and we're doing the Polish Traverse, which is a 360 navigate of the mountain. So you're starting the eastern side, you're going to circle around and come up the western side. It is more challenging. It has longer distances, but it has better visuals. So there is a shorter way to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, but for me, this is the coolest way. And you'll see some of the visuals that I show you guys here in a moment. This hike itself is more than 60 miles. So you need to ask yourself when the last time you've hiked at high altitude more than 60 miles. Obviously, if you guys have done Everest Base Camp, that is a 90-mile trek, so you will understand what that's like as well. This trip is meant for 8 to 12 people, and we can always do private groups upon request. So tonight I'm going to show you what it is. I'm going to show you some pictures. I'm going to show you a few things that will take a little bit for you to understand, and then I'll answer any questions. So again, as I was mentioned, this is harder than climbing Kilimanjaro. This is harder than trekking to Everest Base Camp, and here's why. It is a longer time on the mountain, longer distances, colder, unpredictable weather near the top, and you have to carry gear, or you have to carry some gear, and we'll get into that. The success rate is usually 25 to 30%. So out of the 2,500 people that climb Aconcagua every year, you can do the math for 30% of the people actually make it to the top. And I would say two of the main reasons would be wind near the top, which can be really bad, and low physical preparation. I prepared 5 months for this trip pretty consecutively, and it was still a very, very difficult trip for me. I know a number of people. It was a very difficult trip for all of the group that was on my climb. And again, for those of you who were late, and when I started this recording late, this is considered both a trekker's and a climber's peak. In general, there's no technical equipment needed to climb Aconcagua. You're walking up a mountain on a trail to the top in general. However, there is a little bit of nuance to that. So if there's anything you want to get out of tonight, it's this slide right here. And I can send this to you if you reach out, but this is what your adventure looks like. And I'm just going to grab my little cursor here and point out a few things. So we're going to start in Mendoza, which is the city that you're going to fly into in Argentina. Wonderful city, by the way. And you're going to spend a night there and meet the guides like you have on other adventures. We're going to take a vehicle to day 2 to Patins, and we're going to spend one night here before we start our trek. Starting from day 2 to day 3, and day 4 and day 5, we're going to start the trek. So as you can see, we're going to the first tent, which is considered day 3 or your first day of your hike. And you can see moving on to day 4, another day of your hike. And notice the elevations, 10,170 feet to 11,800 feet, already relatively high on the hike. And we're going up to the base camp. And that was the camp that you saw me speaking at, called Plaza Argentina, at 13,000 feet. So for this section, we are from day 2 forward, we are hiking up there. And you can see we're spending 1 night at each camp. When we arrive at this camp, though, something different happens. Is we're going to actually stay there for 4 nights for a number of reasons. 1, we're staying there for acclimatization purposes. And 2, we're staying there because we're actually going to ferry equipment up to the next camp. So if I can draw your attention down to the bottom where my cursor is, you can see we're coming up to Plaza de Argentina, and here we are, day 5 right here, okay? We arrived this day and we are going to rest because we just were hiking for 3 days. Now, these 3 days getting up here, it's 30 miles of hiking in a riverbed. It's very, very hard. It's a pain in the butt. We're going to get to this day and we're going to rest. The next day, we're going to take a full rest day because we've already been hiking for a number of days. The following day, you're going to see we're going to actually go up to Camp 1. So if you'll notice above, we have a line going up and a line going down. We're going to go up to Camp 1 and we're going to cache a bunch of stuff, our gear, that we're going to use later on in the trip. And then we're going to come back down to where we were. So we take it up and drop it off. This is very, very important for acclimatization purposes, especially on this mountain, which is a long style hike. The next day, we're going to wake up, rest, and then we're going to start we're going to spend the night, 1 more night. And then the following day, we're going to stack our next hike up to Camp 1. So as you can see in Camp 1, we're there, right? And the next day, we're going to actually go up and do another cache. So what we're doing from Plaza Argentina up is we're always taking maybe 20 or 30 pounds of gear up to the next camp, coming back down and sleeping, returning to that camp, resting, maybe resting an extra day, then carrying stuff up and then ferrying back. Okay. These are what we call carry days. Okay. So there are 7 carry days on this trip. Now there are porters in Argentina, but porters in Argentina are not as plentiful or as affordable as porters in other parts of the world. They're expensive. And so a lot of people carry their own stuff or some of their stuff. So as we make our way up the mountain, we go up and descend down, drop stuff. We get up to the final day, 19,685 feet, up, drop our stuff. And then we're coming back down the other side, Plaza de Mulas, where other people are coming up. This is conceptually what it looks like, and we'll look at this a little bit later at the end. This is the start of the trek. As you can see, it kind of feels very high deserty. There's not much vegetation in general on this entire trek. So here's our group getting ready to start out our hike. And here's the beginning of that hike, the 30 miles I was talking about, hiking in a riverbed or around a riverbed. So this is, again, the Polish Traverse route, which is going to circumnavigate Aconcagua. The cool thing about it is there's a little bit of adventure on this. So here we are actually getting to physically walk across a small river. There are actually ways to take mules across the river as well, but a number of people in the morning we were able to walk across. This is what one of the camps actually looks like. So this is actually one of the camps, and then this is actually where we're crossing. But as you can see, we come in here, we've got a couple dome tents set up. This was, I would say, 4 groups of us. So we have a dome tent down here that stays down here year round. And we come up to this dome, and this dome is ours, right? And we'll look in one of those domes here in a second. And so there's other groups that are going up as well. And this is that river. And then Aconcagua is headed up here. So by this point, I believe we've hiked at this point about 22, 23 miles already in very difficult non-trail, not going up, but in standard kind of riverbed. Okay. The cool thing about the first 3 days, if you remember, is you're not carrying gear the first day. Now, I've been talking about carrying gear, but your first 3 days, you do not. We are having our gear carried by muleteers on these horses. So these horses are going to take us all the way up, all your gear up to base camp. So again, and I'll show you in the map, you're not carrying any of your backpack or your gear on the mountain. Cool thing about this, for those of you who are not vegetarians, the muleteers make a really mean barbecue on the trek itself, and it's always nice to have a good barbecue on there. And so they do that on our second night before they depart from us on our third. So they are getting all of our gear up to base camp. And as we're hiking up to base camp, again, high desert kind of feeling like this. We're making our way slowly up the mountain. Remember, base camp is at 13,000 feet. So we are hiking up there, and to get to 13,000 feet again is taking us 3 days. Oops. And as we're starting to climb, we're finally getting up to Plaza Argentina. So if you take a look at this base camp right here, it's big. It's not the biggest, though. There are bigger camps on the other side of the mountain, but this, I think at one time I did a count, and there's a lot of tents kind of hidden back there. You can't see. There was, I think, over 100 tents. There's a lot of kind of hidden tents on the left with some of the porters as well. But this is base camp, and this is where you are. And this is actually almost feels like a functioning city at 13,000 feet. The only way to get here is by helicopter or walking our horse. So our muleteers leave our gear at this point. We've not carried it up to this part, and we're in base camp, and this is where we're going to be for 4 nights. Okay. Now, it's nice. The camp lights up at night. The thing about the camp that is different, if any of you have ever been and actually slept in Everest Base Camp, is it almost feels like it's a city. They have almost, there's Wi-Fi and showers. Here's our cooking tent that stays at the base camp for the entire season, which is typically about 4 months. So it is going to stay here the whole time. And these gentlemen are going to cook for the different groups that come up the mountain. So this is staying here. All of our cooking on the mountain is not like this. This gets taken down every year. And a lot of our cooking is much more rudimentary as we get up the mountain higher. We kind of hang out in a bigger style dome like this where we eat, play cards, talk. Actually, this camp has Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi is included on this Embark trip at this camp. So we spend 4 days here, maybe doing some acclimatization hikes, taking our gear up to the higher camp, and then kind of coming back down. But as I mentioned, you'll see funny signs like this: coffee bar, internet, charging station, meals, lodging, mules, porters, visitor camp. So it's quite interesting. There's some very, very impressive dome tents that are up there that have like teak floors and couches and all sorts of things. Ours are not as nice like that. But they're really, really cool. So it's like a little functioning city. And I can tell you that the other base camp on the other side probably has 500 or 600 people in it. It feels like an actual city. So one of the most important things about this trip is a doctor must approve whether you can proceed past base camp. So there are doctors at this camp, and there are doctors at the base camp on the other side that are going to validate if you get to proceed up the mountain or not. And what they're looking for is they're looking for how you're feeling and if you're having any issues. And so they're going to do a 10-minute consultation with you, and they are going to approve if you are going to be able to go above the 13,000 feet. We had one gentleman in our trip who was not able to go above this. He had a lot of issues with his feet, had a lot of blisters already. We're only 3 days in. There was no way he was going to be able to continue and hike another 40 plus miles up the mountain. So in that scenario, you get approved and you buy insurance, and a helicopter comes and gets you. So you just spent 3 days walking 30 miles. And then if they don't approve you to go up, you either have to have the right kind of insurance and get a helicopter flight out, or walk back out. But most people take a helicopter flight out. So this is pretty well organized down there, and it's very, very efficient and safe for them to do rescues on this side and the other side as well. So again, where we are, just for reference, is we're still at Plaza Argentina. All of our gear was carried by mules until right here, okay? So now we're going to start hiking up the mountain, and this is where it starts to get a little bit steeper. Again, you can notice this is pretty basic hiking, kind of going up. In this scenario, you'll notice that we are wearing helmets, and there's a number of steep sections here where rocks could potentially fall. So we do ask people to bring helmets on this section of the mountain. We start to come into a number of camps. I'm not going to show you every one of the camps. I'm just going to give you an idea of what they look like, but you'll notice we're starting to get to where there's snow at right here. So this is probably 16, 17,000 feet. We're coming into another camp. Feels much smaller than the previous camp, and we're coming over here to these yellow tents where we're going to be. Now, as why we may have had Wi-Fi and nice food and things at the lower camps, things up here become a little bit more primitive. The guides end up being the cooks for the group. We don't have separate cooks in this situation, and bathrooms and things like that become a little bit more difficult. Here's again the group up there at night. Again, looks wonderful. The season for Aconcagua is generally December through March, actually November into March. Here is the inside of one of the other camps where they're cooking foods. As you can see, this looks way more primitive. These are a bunch of guys sitting around cooking good food, most of the food in Argentina, but it does not feel like the cooking stations as before. Nor do, well, actually, here, this is Patos. Here's us eating avocado toast for, I think, a lunch. So the guides are cooking. Now the toilet. Now this is not going to be the toilet on your trip. We've made some slight adjustments, but you have to be incredibly flexible in these scenarios to do a trip of this caliber. This is what the toilet station was like. Essentially, you're going to go to the bathroom on the toilet. You're going to wrap the paper. You're going to put it inside a plastic bag. You're going to use hand sanitizer. We're moving to a better functioning toilet in this scenario. But as you can see, this is harder. This is not like on Kilimanjaro where you're sitting on a nice little potty or something like that. It's a little bit more difficult in this scenario. Now, there are toilets on the other side as well. At the base camp, actual physical porcelain toilets. But in this scenario, there's not up at the higher mountain parts. There's a lot of hanging out at the higher parts where we're going to go up. Maybe you had a layover day on one of your other trips in Dingboche or Karanga Camp or whatever, but there's a little bit just kind of hanging out, letting our body acclimatize to the elevation, right? Okay, so back to Mount Kilimanjaro not being a technical, or not, I'm sorry, Aconcagua not being a technical mountain. This year, for the first time in a long time, there was a lot of snow near the top. And right at the top, there was ice. So in this scenario, we made everyone bring crampons, which you'll bring in the future, and we made everyone bring an ice axe. Literally only the top of Aconcagua, the last, I think half an hour had ice on it, but we were going to prep for it anyway. So in this scenario, when we were hanging out, we were teaching everybody how to use an ice axe with crampons on. Yes, I know you're not supposed to use an ice axe with crampons on, but we were demonstrating what it was like if you were to fall up near the top. In general, as I said before, Aconcagua can be a trekker's peak, and you will go up the mountain on a hike you'll go up the mountain without any technical equipment. You will always use crampons. You might not always use an ice axe. As we know, in the United States this year, we've got a lot of snow, and they've got a lot of snow down in Argentina as well. So we do a little bit of practice on those higher elevation days before we are going to go to the summit. So here we are at 19,685 feet. That is not the top of Aconcagua. We did not make it to the top of Aconcagua this year, and that was because of what I mentioned earlier, because of wind. So we did build 2 extra days for weather into our itinerary, and neither of those days were going to present themselves with a safe approach to getting up to the top of the mountain. So this was as high as the Embark group went this year. That final night to go to the top from 19,685 to 22,841 will take you 10 hours going up and 5 hours coming down. So after you've been here for a night or two and you're going to tackle the top, it's going to be a 10-hour hike. Most of the hikes here are not done in the middle of the night like they are done in other areas. They actually start more at like 4 or 5 in the morning than these kind of scenarios. So this group did not make it to the top. All right. So here's the most important thing of the whole thing. We have gear carry requirements. Okay. So you're going to, if you're going to do this and you are not going to get a porter, which are expensive, you have to carry weight. So if you look in these scenarios, you have 7 days where you have to carry gear. So day 7, look, you have 22 pounds. Day 9, now remember we're talking about those carry days. So day 7, day 9, day 10, you can see the amount, 22 pounds, 32 pounds, 22 pounds, 30 pounds. You are going to carry that up to the next camp. Okay, you do not have to if you want to pay for a porter, but I can assure you that a porter to cover you for all of this right here would probably be over $2,000 for a porter to do this for you. It's expensive. And so about half of the climbers carry their own gear or do some combination. So kind of looking back, where was that? So those carry days, you know, 1 carry day right here, 1 carry day right here, a carry day right here, carry days, all those 7 days are built into it. So you have to help carry gear in these scenarios. For porters can be hired for partial weight or full weight. We do hire porters. Porters do carry our stuff, but the extra stuff, all of your gear, they're carrying our tents, they're carrying our food, they're carrying all sorts of things, but you have a bag full of gear. Those prices range from $600 to more than $2,000. You can hire a porter for 1 day. You can hire them for all the days. You can hire them for half the weight. All those kind of do those things. So example, if you were to hire a porter for 10 kilos one way, days 9, 11, and 14, the price is $647. Now this changes a little bit each year. And if you bring cash right now in Argentina, it's a great thing. You can get some pretty good discounts with porters, but the porters are really a focal point for helping you get up the mountain, whether you want to do it yourself or not. So what is the cost? The cost for climbing Aconcagua is around $4,300 with a group of 10, $4,600 with a group of 7. If you go to a lot of other companies, they're over $5,500, $6,000. But obviously you have to get there. The porters, if you decide to use one or not, the permit, which we're going to go over, insurance, and gear. Now, the big one that's a big miss on this is gear. The gear can be very expensive, especially double boots. My double boots for Aconcagua were $1,500. It is too expensive. So you can rent gear, and that was a big mistake I made on this trip. It was I actually bought the gear and I should have rented it for 1/10 of the cost. You need a negative 20-degree sleeping bag. You need a lot of very insulated, very cold weather down jackets for the mountain. You can rent all the gear, and many people do, right? Now let's look at that. So you can see you can rent this gear for 20 days. You can kind of get an idea. The double boots can be rented for $200. Don't pay $1,500 for a pair of boots. Trekking boots, fleece, down jacket, all these kind of things can be rented there, and we can get discounts if we have cash. The permit is not included, and there's a number of reasons why, but the permit pricing is normally $800 for the normal route, $950 for the Polish Traverse. Last year, if you paid before September, they gave you a discount and it was $540. We don't know if they're going to do that again this year or not, but we kind of leave the permit up to the individual because we never know what the pricing is ultimately going to be. And if people decide not to go 1 year for whatever reason, that permit can carry over to another year. So that is what the permit. So if you can think about the price, say $4,500 and a permit, let's just take a high end, 1,000, you're $5,500 without airfare and without gear. So as we start to descend, this is that big city that I was talking about on the way down. Not city, but the other base camp on the way down, much bigger And it's one of our places that we stop on the way back down. I'm not going to show all the pictures on the descent, but again, as you can see, no vegetation, tons and tons of scree on the descent. I like this, or I would prefer not to come up this route. I like going up the Polish Traverse route because there's just much more beauty to it, in my opinion. So for training, this is not a first-time mountain. Should have experience with other high altitude treks. Rainier, Whitney, maybe a Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, those kind of things. This would not be your first mountain you'd ever climb. You must start 6 months in advance, and you must have strength training involved in your plan. Many previous plans for Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp are cardio centric. We need strength training and stretching on this because you're going to be carrying a pack. You're going to be carrying a pack 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet, 30 pounds, 40 pounds. One gentleman lost 17 pounds on this trip. So it's a trip that you exercise a lot on, but you feel amazing after it's done. So again, we do have new online videos now on how to do strength training for this trip. If you're interested in seeing those, they're on Embark's YouTube page. So again, on the way out, the final day is a grueling, I want to believe it was 16 miles, final day in Riverbed, basically on the way back out. So hard trek. Remember, there's a lot of people that are coming up this way that are going to the other base camp that are trying to climb Aconcagua in a shorter period of time. Anyways, this is our group with a group of about 8 or 9. We have 3 guides. These are all local Argentinian guides that helped us get to the top and now are working for Embark for our trips every year. And that's basically, jumping back again, I'm going to open it up for questions kind of now. If anybody has any questions, you can also type it into the chat. But I think I just spoke there for a half an hour. Does anybody have any questions? I'm kind of showing this and just kind of making sure everybody understands how this itinerary works. I know Nicole's has to have a question.
Always, Donovan. Come on. I have like 20, but I'm only asking one.
Yeah. What is your question?
Oh, I put it in the chat. I followed directions, for God's sakes.
I don't see it.
Pack size. So
Yes.
Keely, I think I had 36. What's pack size for this one?
Yeah, 100.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd have 100. You'd have 100-liter backpack, and you'd have an extra large duffel that needs to be able to carry everything. And there's only a few specific bags that are built for it. Yeah. So again, that's if you don't have 100-liter, don't buy one. You can
rent it.
You can get one there. Same with the duffel as well. Yeah.
And 2 sets of boots.
Yeah, 2 sets of boots. You're going to need your regular hiking boots, and then you're going to need a double boot. And a double boot is basically an insulated boot with a shell on the outside of it for cold weather. A lot of them, some of them are kind of knee high. I have a knee high ones I should have brought to this, but yes, so you would need a double boot. So a lot of things on this equipment list, but again, the rental it was a big miss on our part this year. We did have a lot of people rent things as well. And if you plan to keep climbing other big mountains and you do plan to climb Mount Everest, then you would probably want to get the double boot. Yeah.
So really different than Keely. Interesting.
Yeah, real different. So again, gear is carried up to here. We're going up and back, up and back, up and back, up and back, and shuttling all of our gear. And then when we get back to Plaza de Mulas, those muleteers that brought our stuff up to right here are going to pick our gear up and carry our gear out as well. So yeah, so Embark's going to be doing a trip like this every year. We'll probably hopefully do more. We're going to have another meeting in early September to meet the initial group of people who are interested. Does anybody have any questions? For some reason, I'm not allowed to click into the chat. I think it's because I have my pointer on. Turn off laser pointer. Okay, there we go. Uh, any other questions?
I've got a question, Donovan.
Yeah.
This is Jim Keen. I came in like 3 or 4 minutes late, and you had a slide on the summit success rate, and I missed it. And I think I
Yeah.
heard 25% or 30%.
Correct. An average of 2,500 people climb Aconcagua every year with a 25 to 30%, depending upon who you are, success rate. So our group did not make it to the top. There were 45 people in our camp. Not everyone tried due to the wind, but we know of one person out of the 45 people that were up there that stayed and actually made it. Yeah.
And is that 25% to 30%, that's pretty common over different years and so forth?
Correct. So I know one gentleman who was on my trip. I don't know if he's on here tonight, but he was planning to go back and try again. Yeah. So also in speaking with the guides, just so everyone knows, we basically partnered with Argentinian Mountain Guide Association. We rent some of the dome tents as we're going up the mountain. And most of the guides, are realistically only as a mountain guide are only able to climb it one time a month. And there's usually a 4-month window. So you're talking maybe 4 times a season at best, right? You're not able to go up and down it. So most of the guides are looking at, 30 to 50 summits in general. What other questions do we have tonight?
Does anybody use double plastic boots?
Yes, we had someone rent double plastic boots and that would work just fine. I do have a message that said I have to go. I'm interested. Okay. Any other questions tonight?
Tipping, Donovan?
Yeah.
Tipping for everybody?
Yeah. So I think our collective group each threw in, we each threw in like $200 to $300 to cover the guides. We didn't tip any porters or anything. In that scenario, there's kind of different porters that are carrying your gear on different days. We just covered the guide. So I think each of the guides walked away with like $900 or something like that. So yeah. So the one advantage to all of this, for those of you who are here, the Argentina's currency is pretty crazy right now. I don't know if it's going to be crazy, but it has a 100% inflation rate. And by bringing hard cash into the country, you can get some pretty amazing deals in terms of negotiating rental fees and things like that. So it's a great place to do. My wife and I did a wine tour afterward in Mendoza. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be on this one next February because we have some other trips that are going. But if people are interested, we're going to start the sign up process. We're not going to go with under 8 and we're not going to go with more than 12. So I know of 2 that I believe are confirmed right now. So if 6 more people are ultimately interested, I know people will decide here soon. I do have a message from someone that says they're interested. So any other questions from anybody?
What
I have
about
Go ahead.
what about food constraints? How do you does Embark determine the menu, and then how do you?
No, so if you have specific issues like you're vegan or gluten-free or something like that, you communicate that to us and that's communicated to the guides. I can tell you that it is kind of a meat-based culture in Argentina and specifically on the mountain. But we can accommodate vegetarians and we have in the past.
Donovan, if I can be so bold, I did the Kilimanjaro trip with Embark and I have some pretty wonky dietary restrictions that Donovan's gonna laugh at me about. And they were amazing with it and I had no problems eating on the whole trip.
Thank you.
What about insurance? Do you have a idea of how much insurance is?
Great question. Very, very important question. So yeah, so you absolutely are required to have insurance to come on this adventure. And there's a specific company that you can get insurance with where they've already communicated with the park authorities, where that helicopter ride that gentleman got is just like seamless, like he doesn't have to pay for it, and it's all kind of organized. The name is escaping me right now, but I can say on average, I believe people paid $300 to $400 for their insurance. So what happens if you're not able to go ahead in certain scenarios? There are, fortunately, walkie-talkies and communication platforms up there. But for example, the gentleman that was pulled out after day 3, literally the doctors call the helicopter company, the park authorities, you have the insurance, and the helicopter comes and kind of gets you, but the doctor has to approve it first. You can't just go down for whatever reason, but it's about $300 to $400 for the better policy. That is kind of seamless, and I can figure what that is, and let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How high up the mountain do the helicopters go?
The helicopters only go up to Camp 2. So if you're looking at this image, 18,000 feet, and that's on a good day. So I know that they're generally preferred to be a Plaza Argentina or Camp 1. And then Plaza de Mulas, there are camps between Camp 3 and below. So it's tricky. It's trickier here. That's why I think we do the 4 days at 13,000 feet to make sure everybody's really set on kind of going up the mountain, because we prefer not to call helicopters at 16 or 18,000 feet.
How would you describe this compared to Kilimanjaro? I know the porter thing is totally different, but just in terms of the physical exertion.
Yeah. Twice as hard. This route is twice as hard. Yeah, twice as hard. So it's hard. It's hard. It's really hard. So I don't know how else to articulate it, but every day you sleep really, really well. And you got to go into it with like a kind of a positive mindset to get through this. We did have 2 people on our trip get the full porter, meaning they didn't have to carry anything on any of the days except of their day pack. And they still struggled with it as well. All the people that came on this trip were pretty accomplished people in terms of, not pretty accomplished, but they've done most of the things that people on this call have done in the past, like Kilimanjaro. So I would say it's a third longer than Kilimanjaro. The descent is not as well, I guess. It's a third longer, and you're carrying a lot of the weight, and there's a lot of moving parts. I know it seems kind of complicated, but it's hard. It's really hard. All right. Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate seeing some of your faces and seeing some of your names. You know where to find me if you're ready to do a really cool adventure and take it to the next level. This is it. If you're a 7 summiter, this is the next step. Look in the next few weeks, starting in starting in May, for discounts with Embark. We're going to be launching a loyalty and a referral program, and there might be some discounts that some of you could get on this trip. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Reach out if you have any questions, and I hope to see some of you on this adventure. Thank you.